Well, good morning and welcome to another week on my allotment. And what a morning, what a morning. There's a few grumbles from my wife this morning as I set my alarm for 5 and unusually it did go off. She was none too happy. Anyway, I can't imagine what it's like trying to live with me. Well, I can imagine, but anyway, I'm waffling. Welcome along to the plot. And if you've got a kitchen garden or an allotment, you know instinctively that at some point as we come out of the winter and the winter sheds its clothes and moves forward into spring, it's that moment that fills you with joy and anticipation and excitement. And if you don't feel that, I sympathise with you, because I have to say right now, this week, I'm absolutely bursting with anticipation for the season ahead. The weather is glorious. We had a lovely day out yesterday with my son and his family. And on the plot, everything's starting to happen. It's not just on the plot, back in the greenhouse, and we'll have a look at that in a second. Sowing lots of seeds germinating. All my tomato seeds have germinated, so you'll be pleased to know that, Terry. It's wonderful. The greenhouse is bursting with new growth. And here on the plot too, there are things moving. I'm going to pick my first crop today, the rhubarb. Spoke to Cheryl about having a rhubarb crumble this evening for tea, and she gave me the big thumbs up, so I shall pick some rhubarb today. That's always a wonderful moment. So welcome along. I've had a few new subscribers. I had my usual where I have a little talk about health, and as for all the people who comment and say they enjoy that, I also have a couple of people who just disappear because I think they probably hate being lectured to, and that's not what it's intended for, but inevitably I do lose a couple, but you know, that's life. Yeah, welcome along to this exciting moment on my allotment. What an absolutely special moment. I'm stood here at the very end of my plot and I'm listening to birdsong, sheep, a few crows, looking out across the Severn Estuary as the sun rises on a beautiful but crisp and cold morning. And I hope you'll excuse, and I know I've done this a lot lately, but I thought we'd have a walk up the plot. I walked on here this morning about an hour ago and I was struck by how neat and tidy it all is. I'm really rather pleased with my efforts, and I know that's a bit self-indulgent, but so be it. Yeah, so there's my rhubarb. I'm going to pick some this morning. I'm also going to sow my first carrots, and I know that's a bit of a gamble, but well, I'm going to do it anyway. Only 1 or 2 of the tubs. Now these tubs here, they were my parsnips last year, so this year they're going to be my carrots. And the tubs that are up behind the shed, they were the carrots, and this year they're going to be the parsnips. It's a complicated system. Anyway, yeah, it's all extremely neat. I've pointed it out before, I know, but the rows, I've got a rows each side and they're growing. These 3 tubs, the tulips, are now forming the heads. Another week or 2 and they'll be out. And those daffodils there are a joy to behold. So yeah, right at this very moment, you know, as an allotment for spring goes, because I've said it before, there's an awful lot of brown on this site at the moment, but I think it's pretty damn special. Really enjoying these tubs of daffodils, little splurges of glorious colour on a very brown canvas. And I look every day to see if the broad beans have got a full, you know, the flowers are dropping off and the pods are forming, but not yet. I'm being a bit over enthusiastic. And I'm going to show you the asparagus bed in a moment. Some extremely exciting developments and some very curious a very curious find. More of that in a second. But yeah, very neat and tidy. I'm absolutely loving it, and lots to do today. Why would you not get up early to come and enjoy that? So for those of you that don't know, and a reminder for those of you that do, last summer I got a packet of asparagus seeds with a magazine, and I thought, well, let's give it a go, and I got 5 seeds to germinate, and towards autumn I dedicated a small bed to them, and I put the ridges in, planted the 5 asparagus plants into the ridges, and they grew away, and of course, you know, come the winter I cut them down to the ground, and of course now is the sort of time, it's a bit early, but I'm looking for signs of have they survived over the winter. Well, I come up, it's the first thing I do when I arrive on site every day, or whenever I come, is I get down really close to the ground and I'm looking for any signs of new shoots of growth. You know, to anyone passing by, it must look really strange. But anyway, this week I've seen some signs. There's some tiny little shoots coming up from a couple of the 5 plants, and I'm absolutely thrilled. And I can't help myself. I'm an impatient guy, and I was just using my finger to flick away some of the soil on the plants where there's no sign, and I saw a little bit of white in the, you know, in the raised soil. So I dig away a little bit more, like an eager archaeologist, and I pulled this out. I mean, you probably can't see what that is from there, but it's a loaf of bread. A blimmin' loaf of bread had been buried into the raised ridge of my asparagus bed. Well, you could have knocked me down with a feather. I had to take it over and show John. I said, John, look. I mean, I haven't tasted it, but I know it's bread because there's a bit of the crust on the outside. Something, I mean, the only thing I can think of is rats. But I didn't know rats buried food to come back later. Anyway, I've come back today, so that was Friday. Today's Sunday. I've come back, and of course I've pulled this loaf out, covered the soil back over, and I put this in my shed to show you today. Well, blow me, I've come back this morning, and there's another hole where this was. So whatever it was that buried it has been back to pick it up, and will be very disappointed to find it's gone. And I don't know what I'm going to probably put it in the compost bins, I guess. But what a strange thing. Anyway, anybody got any ideas what would do that? Am I right? Is it a rat? They better not eat my asparagus or we'll fall out. Anyway, let's go and have a look at the asparagus. So, there's the digging I mentioned, where whatever it is has been looking for its tiger loaf. And if right next to where they're digging, if I can point to it, there. Don't know if I'll pick it up, but they are the tiniest little shoots of asparagus that are coming up. And if I bring you round slowly, there's a better one there. Now, in the bigger scheme of things, as far as allotments and gardening goes, that's not exactly earth-shattering, but when you take a very delicate little seed and you plant it, you sow it, you plant it, you put it in the ground, and then you wait all winter long for any signs that that tiny little vulnerable plant is going to come back after a harsh winter, and it does. The only word I can think to use is thrilling. One of the jobs I've done at home in my tubs, I've got tubs at home in the garden and here, is I've planted my second earlies, Charlotte and Kestrel. I'm growing Kestrel because John, my friend, on the plot but 1, or plot but 2, he grew Kestrel in the ground here last year. I've never had any success because the slugs and the wireworm have ruined them. But he grew Kestrel, and the whole crop was in excellent condition, no damage at all. So I ordered those in the autumn, and I've got them from DT Brown's, who I can thoroughly recommend, and I had some left over, so I've planted 1 row of kestrel there, and I've planted 2 rows of Charlotte, 1 up the middle and 1 there, and we'll see. So I've got some in tubs at home and some in this bed, and I'm going to see how it goes and review how I grow my potatoes. As I said, I'm going to sow some carrots today. It might be a little bit early, but I'm prepared to risk it. Nothing ventured, nothing gained, eh? I avoid cliches like the plague. So all my carrots and all my parsnips are grown in tubs, and mostly they're grown in those large blue agricultural plastic drums that have been cut in half. And they're plenty deep enough for carrots and parsnips. However, I do have some other tubs that I've got from customers and I don't know where, and they're only about that deep, the sort of recycling bin type thing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to sow this carrot here, and it's a ball type, so it looks a little bit like small beetroot. So of course they need no depth, and the theory is that they'll grow fine in these smaller tubs. And this carrot is called Paris Market 5. So I'm going to try and sow some today. I mean, you get hundreds, 500 seeds in a packet. So, I can afford to lose a few if I go a bit early. And I do, every year I do the same now. I've learnt it off of YouTube, off a lady who has a homestead in America. One of the best tips I've ever come across. And what I do now is I take out some of the soil from the top. It's a soil and sand mix, which is better for carrots and parsnips because they get a looser run to go down. I take some of the soil out and put it in a sieve ready. The soil is loose and dug, and then I water it, pre-water it, scatter my carrot seeds, then I sift the soil I've taken out over the top very lightly. I don't compress it, and then I put a cover on, and I've got a piece of wood for just that, and it stays on for 7 days. And the theory of that is it keeps the rain off, which compacts. The carrot seedlings are the tiniest, most gentle little things, and if the soil is heavy or it's compacted by rain, they simply don't germinate. That's what I've found here. So that's what I do, and after 7 days I take the board off and they're on their own. If it rains, it rains. If it doesn't, I water them, and I've had really good germination with that, so that's what I'll be doing with those today. I'm not going to need the fire for much longer because the day is warming up. But I thought I'd do something a little bit different, just a bit of diversity, tell you a little bit about my past. And I've given you plenty of stories about my military life. And at the end of my 30-year career, I wanted to sort of mark it in some way. And with my wife's generous agreement, because it wasn't cheap, I went to the Nahani River in the Northwest Territories of Canada and canoed down the Nahani for 2 weeks with a group of friends. And it was the trip of a lifetime. It was spectacular. The Nahani River has 5 canyons, and they are second only in depth to the Grand Canyons. And I've been to the Grand Canyon, and I can tell you it's not got a patch on the Nahani River, in my opinion. So we went and did this trip. We flew from London Heathrow to Calgary. From Calgary we went up to Yellowknife again on a second plane, and then from Yellowknife we flew into Fort Simpson, which was a First Nations settlement, and then from Fort Simpson's, where we picked up all the gear, including the canoes, went into a float plane, and then that chap flew us up into a place called Rabbit Kettle Lake, and from Rabbit Kettle Lake we portaged across about 1.5 miles or so to the Nahani River, and then we put on the river and we were gone for 2 weeks. And it was just unbelievable, superb. But before we went on the float plane, we had to log our trip at a ranger station, because they only allow a certain number of people in. It's true wilderness, and once you're in, you can't be rescued. You know, they can't get in there, so you're on your own. And I found that quite exciting and exhilarating. And they gave us a few sort of simple do's and don'ts. And of course, one of the first things you have to remember is, you know, there's major predators. You know, the grizzly bears and so on. They don't like to be near humans, but occasionally that people are attacked and killed. And they said, make sure you have your eating area, your cooking area, and your washing and ablutions area completely separate, 100 metres or more, from your tents. And we had little individual tents. There was 4 of us. And he said, when you go to camp at night, when you select somewhere to stay overnight, find somewhere where there's not a lot of bear prints, because if there's a lot of bear prints, it's a thoroughfare, and you know, you may well be disturbed. Well, we took that on board, and the first afternoon we were looking for a campsite, we couldn't find anywhere without fresh grizzly bear prints. Eventually we camped on a pebble beach because there's no prints on a pebble beach. Shows our British ignorance. Anyway, he said a couple of other things that sort of stuck with us. He says, don't clean your teeth in your tents at night. He says, I know you're probably used to cleaning your teeth at night. Don't. Because bears love the smell and taste of toothpaste. And he said, in fact, we had one guy tragically attacked and killed, and the bear went into the tent, and this guy had hemorrhoid cream in the tent with him. And that's what they suspect the bear was smelling and looking for. That conjures up so many bad pictures. And a link to that, he said, when you get into your sleeping bags at night, leave your arms out. Because another attack, a guy was dragged out of his tent in his sleeping bag, and he had his arms zipped in, and he couldn't use his pepper spray, he couldn't defend himself, you know. Oh, I wish they hadn't told me. And another thing he said about the pepper spray, we all had to take pepper spray. He said what tends to happen is after a fatal bear attack, when they do the post-mortem, they find pepper spray in the eyes of the victim, because in the panic to, you know, this grizzly bear's coming at you. At least you didn't see what was coming. So, you know, I mean, I laugh about it now, but clearly it's a very serious subject. But, you know, as always, I like to find humour wherever I can. Yeah, those sort of things stuck with us. Anyway, it was a spectacular trip. It was the trip of a lifetime, and those are memories I hold dear with the 3 other chaps I went down with. So let me show you a few photos of that trip. Well, here in the greenhouse, that's all my brassicas, all clubroot resistant varieties. And then on the staging, multi-sown beetroot, multi-sown spring onions. The onions I've grown from seed, some lettuces, and down there is a perpetual spinach. Oh, that's avocado plant, grown from seed. And then some rose cuttings I've taken, Brussels sprouts, more onions, sown from seed or grown from seed, onion sets that are going to go and fill in the gaps I've got on the plot, and then this other, what looks like empty, multi-cell tray is leeks individually sown into each cell. We'll see how that does. I've never done that before. And two pieces of guttering with pea alderman. Obviously the top one sown, I don't know, about 10 days ago, and the bottom one sown 2 or 3 days ago. So lots going on. Well, that's me for another weekend. I've been given a deadline to be home by 3:30, which will give us enough time for Cheryl to prepare the crumble ready for tonight's tea. So I've got to go. But what a productive day. I've had a splendid day. I've had, up to right now, I've had the site to myself. Actually, that's not true. There was one lady who was here for about an hour. She didn't seem to do much. She sat there with her dog, but again, it's a nice place to sit and do nothing. So yeah, very productive for me. Lots of seed. I've just sown some calendulas for the borders and the pots and stuff in the summer. I've got some radishes that I've sown. I've sown more carrots in the tubs. What else have I? Oh, you saw the peas. Yeah, very productive, both here and at home. So yeah, I'm absolutely thrilled with where I am right now. This is my 6th season as a plot holder here at Hanley. And of course, you learn most from your mistakes, and I've made a lot of them. So right now, although, there's always something to learn. People have had allotments for 30, 40 years and they're still learning. So I'm just a beginner. But I do feel reasonably well placed now for the coming season. All my I've got second earlies, Charlotte and Kestrel. They're now all planted either in pots or in the ground here. So really excited about the season ahead. So stay with me for it. I had one more thought about that loaf of bread. Maybe would a cat... There are a couple of cats that roam the sites, and I'm not a fan of cats, but I don't mind the cats here because hopefully they keep some of the vermin out. Would a cat do that? I don't know. And the other thing is, of course, it's not just that it's been buried into my asparagus bed. Where did the bread come from? I mean, there's a farm shop 150, 200 metres away. That's the best bet. But that would mean carrying it all the way across all these plots to put it into my asparagus bed, which has got, a white little chicken wire fence around it. It's an utter mystery to me. Anyway, thank you for joining me. I hope the little Nahani bit was interesting. And it's 2 weeks tomorrow till my daughter's wedding. I won't be posting that weekend, you won't be surprised to hear. But I may be able to post next weekend. So, whenever I post, I'll see you then. So look after yourselves, take care, bye for now.